Never let them see you when you're breaking. Never let them see you when you fall. That's how we live, and that's how we try. Tell the world you've got it all together. Never let them see what's under.
We're continuing our lesson in John 21. If you'll go ahead and turn there. I just wanted to share with you this weekend, Saturday, a good friend of mine actually passed away on Wednesday. She was an office angel at my church and a very sweet woman. And so I went to her funeral on Saturday. And I was sitting there at the funeral, still not believing that she wouldn't come to church on Wednesday to help me answer the phones. And as I was sitting there and looking at her picture and all the picture of her family, I was really grieved. Of course you are when you go to a funeral. But I really sat for a little bit and I started thinking about the lesson that I've been teaching and that we've been going over for the last 4 Sundays. Since Jesus was crucified and then arose again on Sunday, the first Sunday of the Eastertide. And I started to really think about Peter and the rest of the disciples. And if you remember last week, we talked about, Jesus rose from the dead. He was crucified on Friday, rose from the dead on a Sunday. And his apostles, his disciples didn't really understand what he was talking about weeks and months before about, coming back to life. They had no idea what that really meant. They knew that Jesus had brought Lazarus back to life. They had seen that happen, but they didn't really understand what Jesus was talking about or where he was going with that. So when he died, they were grieving, just like I was on Saturday. And I sat there and I thought, I only knew Joe for a really good year. Where on Wednesdays we'd get together and we'd talk about the books that we read, and she'd share with me. Of course, she loved Harlequin. I'd given those up years ago. But, she just was an avid reader. She would read, and she just did so many things, and she loved God. She had a relationship with him. She went to church. She knew that she needed to put God first in her life because he was always there for her. She was an example to people. And I started thinking Saturday, as I was driving home, I was really touched. And I thought, that's how Peter and them felt when Jesus died. They had walked the earth with him for 3 years, spent every waking moment with him. From that day when he was on the shores of Galilee and he said, "Follow me." They just dropped everything. They didn't even think twice. They just dropped what they had known all their life of fishing and followed Jesus. He was their friend. He was their Lord. He was everything to them. And when he passed away, they didn't have any comprehension of what was to come. They couldn't fathom that he was going to a place and preparing a place and a room for them. They didn't get that. And then, when he came to the upper room and he sat with them and he ate with them and he showed them their scars, they were a little freaked out at first, I'm sure. And then it all started to make sense. And I really love this passage in John 21. Last week we learned that they had gone back to Galilee because that's what the scriptures had prophesied. And they said, he's told everybody, "I'll be back in Galilee and I'll meet you there." And so that's where Peter and the rest of the disciples ended up going. And what did they do? They went back to what was familiar. They went back to fishing. And so as they were out fishing that night, caught nothing, just like they had before in all the other scriptures, caught nothing. And then here's Jesus on the shore and he's, "Hey, Y'all didn't catch anything, did you, friends? And they're like, no. And he says, well, cast your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. Sure enough, they throw their net over there and put it down, and all kinds of fish come up. And then they realize once they get on shore that it's Jesus, it's their friend, it's their Lord. They're so excited. They're all sitting around by the little hibachi, cooking some fish, having some bread. And then Jesus breaks the bread, and then they get an aha moment. This is the Lord. Well, then what happens next, we'll read about how Jesus and Peter, their relationship kind of comes back to a head here. So let's look at 21:15, and we'll read through 25. It says, when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, feed my lambs. A second time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, tend my sheep. And he said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go. He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. And after this, he said to him, follow me. Let's talk about these scriptures real quick. First of all, they're sitting around. They're just kind of hanging around the hibachi. They're talking as a group. Jesus breaks bread with them. I'm sure they had a little bit of a conversation. And then Jesus says, I got some business to attend to with Peter. So they get up together and they start walking along the beach. And if you notice that Jesus says to Peter 3 times, do you love me? Now the first time that he says it, Jesus says to Peter, Peter, do you love me? Do you agape love me? Devotional, inspired, like a father love? An unconditional love. Do you love me that way? And Peter replies to him,